All right, everyone, before we get into tonight's episode, there's a really important e-petition going around here in New South Wales for national parks and recreational users. I've shared it on my socials, so please jump over. I will include the link in the podcast notes. However, it is essentially saying there needs to be a parliamentary discussion regarding the use of national parks and the reduction of use, which really needs to be addressed. This is for all recreational users, so not just people who are wanting hunting in national parks. It's for fishing, fossicking, mountain bike riding, motorbike use, full driving, camping, you name it. So please share it far and wide. We need to get 20,000 signatures, I believe is the number that we need to hit to really have this debated in Parliament. We want that. Let's get it happening. So share far and wide. Again, links in the show notes. One final thing before we get into tonight's episode. Next week's episode is Snow Camp. It is the funniest episode I've ever recorded. I had an absolute blast recording it, editing it, you name it. So I know you guys will enjoy it. Please check it out. It is a long one, but it is well worth it. Damn, some things happened. You got to hear it. All right, let's get into tonight's episode, all on dingoes and Sambar.
1, 2, 3, 4.
You're listening to the Australian Hunting and Beyond podcast with Matt, where we talk about hunting, shooting, fishing, camping, and everything else that the great outdoors has to offer. Let's get into it. Well, I've been looking forward to this one because we're going to get into a lot of stuff tonight, Rob. For those that don't know you, I've followed you on Insta for quite a while now. Your handle is the Obsessed Sambar Man, and it's also, I think you should have Sambar and Dingoes in there.
Yeah, it's definitely got dingoes in it, that's for sure.
It's probably a bit wordy, though, to have the Obsessed Sambar and Dingo Man. But
Well, it didn't always start that way, but yeah.
But, mate, I am super keen to chat to you tonight, and I'm happy to go either one straight up because I've got a million questions about both at you. Where do you want to start, Sambar or Dingoes?
Oh, well, let's go to the dingoes. We'll get that off our chest first.
Beauty.
And then we'll get stuck into these Sambar.
All right, mate. So you're a volunteer, and that's for the Dingo Research Foundation, is it? Did I get that right?
Yes, that's correct. The Australian Dingo Foundation, yep.
Yeah, beauty. So there is some just information out there that is all over the place, and I wanted to hear it from yourself is, to the best of your knowledge, obviously, is there's a lot of talk that the majority of wild dogs are actually genetically dingoes.
Yeah, that's correct, yep. So basically for me, it started off with 16 years as being a forestry firefighter in Alexandra, and it was, based with them, all the seniors at that time all taught us as young blokes that all dingoes were wild dogs. It was just kill them. And so we did. We did that, and we killed as many as we could. We'd run them over, and we would kill them in any which way we could. And then it just things just stopped making sense to what they were saying. And you're seeing these pure gold looking wild dogs at the time, and you're going, geez, it just doesn't add up. It doesn't click. It doesn't do anything. So we started. I think it was back in 2018. I picked up a skull off the 15 mile up around Second Creek up in there, and I got it tested, and it came back 99.9% pure alpine dingo, and I'm just like, what the if I can excuse the French. And from there, the curiosity just kept going, and before you know it, I had 19 samples that I'd picked up from road kills. Hound hunters were giving me ear samples to get tested. I had guys in Melbourne that were, had scalps that they wanted to get tested because it didn't feel right when they'd shot these animals. They thought, it just doesn't feel right. So we got them tested, and so that all came back 99.9% pure alpine dingo. And I'm just like, well, okay. So definitely dingo. So we got in touch with the Australian Dingo Foundation, and so yeah, we just got involved with them, and then now we're 4 years in volunteering as much as we can, raising money and education and doing stuff like that. So, and then today I'm pretty much as passionate I am about dingoes as I am with Samba. So, but yeah, protecting one hand, killing the other.
So, Rob, is there any way that a dingo can reproduce or mate with a dog in the wild, like a domestic one that's got out, a wild dog? Can you walk us through that if you can?
So if a dingo was to breed with a dog, it would have had to have happened in a domestic situation. It would have to have been on someone's property, under someone's control. Dingoes in the wild will not go near dogs. So for one, dogs will come into cycle twice a year, breed twice a year. A dingo can only do that once. A female dingo can only be in a gestation period for 2 days. I'm pretty sure it's 2 days out of that entire time. And dingoes mate for life, whereas a dog, he'll just go, have a good time, go on to the next dog, go on to the next dog. Whereas dingoes, they are companions for life. So once they've formed that companionship, they'll never mate with anyone else ever again.
Is that everywhere, or are you being specific in areas? Because I have heard different in different states or territories.
Far north Queensland, they claim to have a lot more hybrids up and around that area. I can't go into too much information up there because I just haven't done the research up there. I'm not from there. All the information I've got is all from my backyard, my local areas that I've worked in. So that would be the Black Range, Lake Eildon National Park, Rubicon State Forest, Big River, all the way out to Marysville, and then down towards Talangi, and even the Tallarooks. So in there, so that's where we've gotten all our DNA samples from. We haven't had a hybrid come back yet. And since then, I've started to reach out to farm owners and get on board with farmers and try and encourage them to give us DNA samples so that we can prove that there are hybrids out there. And so we're going looking for this, hybrid, and we just can't find it. All the DNA is just coming back 99.9% pure. And if it's not a dingo, it's a domestic dog. It's a domestic feral dog. So, and if that's the case, then you will see that it's a different shaped body. It's a broad shoulders one. It's something that's just way out of character compared to the dingo.
So one of the things I noticed when that study came out down there in Victoria saying that all wild dogs are 99.9% dingo was a lot of people were up in arms about that and really felt that people were pushing this agenda so that they became a species that could no longer be culled or the population kept in check. Is that the case as far as you're concerned?
The Australian Dingo Foundation's not wanting to stop farmers from controlling dingoes on their own property. Okay, so this whole misconception of the sanctuary trying to get everything protected, it's not the case. No one understands dingoes more than Lynn Watson and Mel Browning. Those people have worked with dingoes for numerous years, and they'll know them far better than what most people even do. So what we're trying to achieve, first of all, is to get 1080 banned. And then from there on, we would like to get dingoes protected on all public land. And then that's the main goals. That's the only two main goals that we sort of have. Okay, so for me personally, getting 1080 banned means that we can hunt with dogs in the bush for numerous years to come. Okay, so once the government comes in and puts 1080 throughout the bush, then, the likes of hound hunting stops, hunting with gun dogs stops, pig hunting stops, and all those people that use guns and dogs and take their dogs camping, that's all gone. So, if anyone's ever seen an animal die of 1080, you'll only ever watch it once and you'll never watch it again. So that's what we're trying to achieve at the sanctuary and through, all our time and effort through education.
Look, preaching to the converted on the 1080 thing, I think it's absolutely disgraceful that we still use it and consider it as the go-to. it's indiscriminate.
Yeah.
I love the Graph Boys and some of the things they produced over there on the effects of 1080 in New Zealand, I should say.
Yeah. Yeah.
The thing that concerns me is that it's just so cheap and easy for people to do, and they throw it out of helicopters or they place it. It's just so simple to do.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. And exactly what you just said, whether it be hound crews, indicating dogs, anything like that, they run a risk every time they take their dogs out. And that's a problem.
Yeah.
Because people spend a lot of time and effort
absolutely.
in getting their dogs to a standard.
Yeah, absolutely. And the price of dogs to lose it to a 1080, the time and effort that goes involved, to training it, like you said, it's too great. So, for me personally, I'd rather be hunting sambar in an environment with dingoes in it than hunting in an environment where 1080 is going to effectively kill deer, kill dingoes, kill all your big lace monitors and your goannas, and then it'll start killing birds, like the birds of prey that feed on those other animals and things like that. So the flow-on effect needs to come into play. People need to look further down the window and see what's going to happen if 1080 gets put in the bush. So for me, I feel like I want to stand up and fight this through social media. I feel that social media can give one person a leg up and then the rest of the hunters can go, yeah, he's on a good cause, I'm going to back him, and we'll go forward at that. So people look at me and go, oh, you're a bloody greenie, you're trying to get dingoes protected, you're trying to do all this. It's like, it's not the case, mate. I'm trying to protect our future. Everything's got to do with our grandkids being able to go hunting and enjoy the bush and have all the experiences that we've had. So that's the path I'm on.
I think from a conservation model, and I say it all the time, one of the things I'm big on is I think all populations need to be kept in check. And I can understand people going, if we get dingoes completely put on that cannot hunt or cannot shoot or that side of that, I guess, like what we do with our natives, there's the potential for that population to explode and cause more issues from the other side. And I think for me, I'd like to see something similar in what they do with the wolves. Like, if they are going to protect them, then it's a tag thing or something, if the numbers get out of control. And that's the thing. I mean, we need to look at it in individual areas with species, and we don't do that with anything. And I'm not just obviously picking on a dingo because that's not the case. It's with all animals. And, it's a tricky one to navigate because I see it with the horses up here in the Snowy Mountains, and it's a touchy subject because people think they're beautiful animals. And I get it, mate. I think they're gorgeous animals. But there's a lot, there's too many. They're doing damage to the environment. Now, the dingo, on the other hand, is the opposite, isn't it? Because we can say it's a native animal. But then look at roos, when it's a drought and they're overpopulated from bumper seasons, that causes a problem as well. So I think it's finding that fine balance. But I'm with you on what you're saying.
So the reason why there's what people are saying larger numbers of dingoes around now is because there's larger amounts of prey to sustain large amounts of dingoes. Okay, if you go back pre-settlement, before white settlement, there was only kangaroos, wallabies, and native animals. We've brought deer into the country. We've brought camels, pigs, rabbits, all this extra food source now, and we've let it run wild, and to the point where herbivores have now taken over so far and so much that there's been nothing to combat that other than just shooting and doing that sort of stuff. So now that dingoes are starting to get their ground back a little bit, we're starting to see larger numbers of them because of the amount of sustainable food that can sustain larger numbers of dingoes. And when you look at it in another way, before settlement, the largest animal dingo had to hunt was a kangaroo. Now it's got deer. And we're talking about probably the most adaptive animal in Australia being the dingo. They have adapted to being able to use their families and hold on to their family groups more because it takes a pack or a family group of dingoes to pull down a deer. Okay, so they've adapted to being able to hunt larger game by using numbers of their family. And the word pack and the word family come hand in hand, but dingoes hold on to their young for up to 2 years. Okay, so the male dingo is far more of a better parent than the female. He does all the food collecting, he does all the training, he does everything to look after for the cubs as well. So they're holding on to their cubs, and dingo cubs are fully grown within 6 months. Okay, so they're in an adult size within 6 months, which is far more than what domestic dogs are at. So, and that's because they have to be at that stage to survive in the wild. They've got the elements to contend with. They've got to be able to hunt and get their food, and they've got to be able to keep up with their family as well, or their pack, is what people tend to say. So, yeah, it's very interesting when we go down that path, and you look at how adaptive the dingo is and how adaptive it needs to be to survive in today's society.
So we talk about nature's resilience in what's going on, and some are better than others because otherwise we probably wouldn't have as much extinction of animals. We are continually encroaching on more and more bushland as a society, building, knocking things down. I find it really interesting that one of the things you were talking about then is we've introduced these prey species, and I completely agree. But I think one of the things we leave out of the conversation a lot is before settlement, when kangaroos were not in the numbers, and then we made pasture and we had all these things for those numbers to grow unbelievably.
Yeah.
Then that has caused a problem. And we've, as you said, we've seen those predators almost drop off the landscape, whether it be the thylacine or the Tasmanian tiger, dingoes, wild dogs, bounties. There's been that flow-on effect where we have done that. And that, look, personally, I would much rather see dingoes eating deer than aerial culling, 1080, all those damn things. For me, that's a no-brainer. I mean, we're supposed to live with nature. And I posted a photo the other day, and it was a Indigenous fella and a dingo. And I feel that's just such a ancestral bond. And that's been lost a bit over time. And that's why I want to sort of get you on and talk about these things, because I think it's really easy for us to throw, they're all wild dogs, or to murky the waters. And has that sort of been done deliberately so that we don't look after the dingo? And look at what's going on in Fraser Island or Gari. We are encroaching onto their space. People do the wrong thing and feed the dingoes, and then someone gets bitten. Well, that's not the animal's fault. We shouldn't be trying to put the dingo down. It's doing that's our fault. You're in their habitat. We need to understand.
There's that many signs up saying don't feed dingoes, and don't go near them, and people just don't listen. That they just keep doing it because it's it makes a great photo, or it's look at me, I'm near a dingo, and they don't realize the damage that they're doing by doing it. And it'll get to the point where you probably won't even be able to go camping on Gingari, and it'll just end up getting locked up, like kind of what they want to do with the Great Alpine National Park. It seems when you look down that future, pretty much that's what they want to do. That's the way of controlling what the outcomes. It's the cheapest way that they can control it, is by locking everything up. And that's not where we want to go, and it's not what we want. So we need to work out a way to be able to adapt ourselves to working and living with dingoes and other species. So it's interesting times ahead.
One of the things, I don't know how true it is, but I was told by someone, I can't remember who told me, but the 1080 baits, a lot of the time they use just beef. The company that makes them is beef, and dingoes won't necessarily take those baits because it's not something that they're eating regularly. So that offsets the amount it's impacted by. But apparently wild dogs are the same. So, and again, I'm using both terms because there's so much conjecture out there. Some people, and we're focusing on Victoria at the moment because that's your area of knowledge, as opposed to some of the other states. That's really interesting. I know they're smart animals.
They're super adaptive.
Do they have the ability to do that?
They will. The doggers have to, they have to make sure that their traps are all done with wax and things like that, so that they, can't have human scent on their traps and things like that, because that's just how smart that they've become. So if they've gotten to that point, then they're not really going to go and eat a 1080 bait unless it's, a dog's absolutely starving or a dingo's absolutely starving. Then they'll be forced to take those baits. So that's where it probably gets at, where if they're in an environment where there's a lot of fresh resources for a dingo to get, then they're not going to eat that. It's just, why would you? They're too smart for it. So, but in an instance where there's not a lot of prey around and dingoes are becoming very hungry, and they're going to smell them out, and they will eat them. They will take them. But there's a lot of other animals, like I said to you before, the flow-on effect, that aren't as smart as a dingo. And before you know it, you're killing lace monitors, goannas, you're killing birds of prey and things like that. So animals that aren't as smart are still going to go down that path.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I don't understand why we're not pursuing every other sort of option. And it shocks me how the RSPCA, the Greens, like the AJP, just like they're not like, it should be all over everything they do, because it's not a nice way to go for any animal, and it's not controlled. I know they talk about ground shooting being opportunistic, but I'd rather opportunistic than the other way of just throwing out a bait and poisoning into the environment and see what happens. I don't know. That's my personal opinion. Look, the science, I know there's all these papers, and I've got Eric on previously to discuss these things and tend to pick his brain about these things when they come up. But I sort of look at it and go, there's not enough data out there, in my opinion. So, and just because if it's not a controlled environment, we don't know what's going on as well. Like, it's all good to say under controlled conditions, this is what has happened. However, when it's not under controlled conditions and we don't know what's going on, if we're not testing animals that are dead in the vicinity to see if it is any residue of 1080, etc., well, how do we know that animal's dying from what cause? Well, that's the thing. So there's so many issues to it.
And that's the thing, mate. When you go down that path too, when you're just doing controlled shooting on properties, you're more likely to be able to get the animal that's causing the problem, rather than going, I'm just going to wipe out, 100 animals just for the sake of wiping out 100 animals. And if I do get that one, well, that's a bonus, that's victory. But, I've killed 100 other animals that probably wouldn't even know what a sheep looked like if they fell over one. You go up to the high country, there ain't no sheep up in the high country, and yet they're still getting targeted with bounties and stuff like that. They're not doing any harm up there. They're just minding their own business. But they're being targeted under this Wild Dog Act. They've got a bounty that covers the entire lot of them, except for the ones now over in the Western Vic that have just got that full protection. But yeah, it's pretty crazy doing it that way. So for me personally, I'm all for a person to shoot a dingo on their own property that's doing the offensive work. Okay, but going up to 5Ks up in the bush and targeting dingoes that not the problem, never been the problem, and just because it's a numbers game and people need to see the numbers fall so that they can warrant a good job, then that's just out. That's bullshit.
Yeah, that makes sense to me when you sit there and think, why are we targeting areas like that where they're not around farms, they're not pestering people, they're not causing anything but being just part of nature? Why are we going down that pathway? And I remember reading the study coming out saying that all wild dogs are basically dingoes. And I remember the outrage. There was a lot of people that went down the other side, and as I said, it's a controversial topic because both sides of the fence are very passionate, and I understand that. Like, it's like us with hunting. We're both passionate about hunting. We don't want to see that disappear. So I sort of see all that, but there's got to be some common ground there where we go, all right, well, as you just said, if they're in the high country, who are they bothering? Why are we targeting them? That makes no sense, especially when they could be that benefit to us trying to remove 1080 off the landscape for your indicating dogs, your hound crews, etc. That makes more sense to me.
Well, over the past couple of years, they've been spending $6.5 million in 1080 every year. Now, that's an extraordinary amount. On record, I think it's about 14,000 head of stock that were destroyed from wild dogs and dingoes. And I'm pretty sure 14,000 head of stock wouldn't cost $6.5 million in revenue. So, well, not revenue, but wouldn't it be more beneficial if a farmer said, well, I've lost 10 sheep, and the government comes in and goes, well, we'll reimburse you for that 10 sheep. There's your money, happy days. And then, another way that we can go about it is if you take that $6.5 million every year and you put it into government grants for problem areas for farmers to redo predator-proof fencing and to and help them do a lot. I mean, I'm a sambar hunter. I'll hunt fringe country left, right, and centre, and I can guarantee you, there's not many fences left that that are standing up that protect the state park to the private. There's an old rusty couple of wires left on the ground, and then that's about it. So, if we can get those farmers a helping hand and get those fences re-established with that money that they're spending on 1080, that's been happening for God knows how many years and still hasn't had the desired effect, then surely that's got to be a better option to go down that path and help the farmers out with a more constructible, if that's a word, constructible fence.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. I mean, this is something I preach all the time and say, why are we wasting money, whether it be 1080, whether it be aerial culling, when there's opportunities to have other types of employment, put money back into the community or raise funds to do further conservation work. And there is a perfect example, is that if you were to look at some sort of subsidy for fencing, if you were to get money, generate money on the back of hunting or something on the like. And I keep talking about the US system. I love it, the North American conservation model, that money that goes back into wilderness, and it makes complete sense. We don't seem to do that here as well.
No.
We seem to not want to look at opportunities for ecotourism or for anything along the lines of hunting to really prosper and make money. And I think it's just that palatable thing of guns, which I think is a problem in the community of just, we need to sort of address it and say, hey, we're missing out on so much. Animals, the bush, rural communities, so many things are impacted negatively, which we could grow and it could prosper. But we're not taking advantage of it. It's silly.
Yeah, well, that's it. And I mean, in the Black Range north of sort of Yea, Alexandra and out to Buxton, if you look at that particular piece of bush, it's very barren. It's been smashed by herbivores for so long. And if the herbivores aren't smashing the green pick that's coming up, then we're doing, fuel reduction burns in it every year, burning the same patch every 5 to 7 years, and nothing's ever getting a chance to grow in there. It's just a barren piece of land that, it's either a messmate tree, bracken fern, or it's a bloody rock. It's just, it's a horrible piece of land, and it just needs a good rest. It needs to have the herbivores controlled more than anything. It needs dingoes to go back into it and to control those herbivores and get the bush to be a beautiful place to be rather than just a desert under messmate tree.
I love Bushy from Back to the Bush and what he does with some of the traditional cultural burning and things like that. And it makes sense. And I've said it for a long time, as it's infuriating now that we lock up these areas and just leave them and on the, proviso that you can't take any timber or wood out off the ground because that's an animal's home.
Yep.
And that makes no sense because not every single one has an animal in it. And then forget that part. Let's go just to the fallen sticks.
Yeah.
Like you talk about gum trees and they drop, limbs and branches like crazy. Not all of them are hollowed out and have something living in them. They're just sticks on the ground, which is just tinder, and it's just going to go up like a firebox when it lights. Why can't we go in there, remove that, use it for firewood, help the bush? Like there's multiple opportunities. Again, we're just not pragmatic. And I just think that, unfortunately, I don't know what it is, but people don't want to go down that path. I honestly think it's just people putting it in the too hard basket.
I think so.
And they don't want to go down that.
You're exactly right. It's the too hard basket, and people just think, you know what, it's easier just to lock it all up and say, no, we don't want, trees getting destroyed or getting burnt. We would just rather do our thing and do fuel reduction burns through it all and control it that way. But I don't know how many trees in my 16 years as a forestry firefighter, how many trees I killed to the point where it literally made me sick. And I became more protective of trees and trying to protect trees. So we would have this, tree marking hazard stuff, going down a different path, but we would mark all these habitat trees, right? Protect them, do rako around them and all that. You'd go off down, down the track 2 kilometres and stuff like that. The next bloke's coming down with an excavator and he's just toppling them left, right and centre. And you just come back and you just shake your head and go, I tried everything to protect that habitat tree. I tried to, push all the ones over that needed to be pushed over, but I protected all the habitat trees. And next thing you know, old mate's come down here and he thinks he knows better and he's just freaking toppled them. If they don't do that, then they'll handful them because it's a big thrill to be able to go in and kill as many trees as you can. Now, we left more trees on the ground after doing a fuel reduction burn than we did prior to doing it. And it got to the point where every day at work I was feeling sick to the point where I had to leave. Mentally, my health was cooked. And so I chose to leave and get out of it. So the work that we were doing with the dingoes, that kept getting knocked on the head. There was times where I was threatened to be sacked because of the work that I was trying to do with the dingoes and trying to get it out. And it just went down a path where mentally I just couldn't cope being in that role anymore. And so I chose to get out and end a 16-year career that, when I started, I thought, yep, I'm going to retire in this job. I'm in the job that I love. I'm driving, operating bulldozers. I'm falling trees. I'm fighting fires. I'm doing all the cool shit. And, I only lasted 16 years and now it just makes me sick every time I go in there.
Which is disappointing, I mean, from a personal standpoint, but it's also that it's taken a toll on you mentally as well, because I think that's one thing I think we've really lost as people is the ability to converse with someone on the different side or different opinion and find that common ground or be open to new things. And I am all about that personally because I think that's how you grow. And we don't do that as well as we should. And that you see that when something comes out and, hey, look, I get people might be going, hey, you're a bit of a hypocrite because you talk about 1080, the science and data says one thing, but you feel a different way. Yeah, I do, because I don't feel that the studies are thorough enough, and I don't think it's been done as in depth as it should be and investigated as thoroughly. So there's reasons behind me thinking that. Now, yes, I agree. The studies say certain things, and I understand where they're coming from and talking about the load of the poison, etc. But I also feel that there is a lot of maybe not getting swept under the carpet, because I do feel it's also a financially driven thing that people may not investigate finding dead animals because it's a costly venture. And they they might not want to know what the result is because it might impact what they're doing, which then impacts maybe their hip pocket, which impacts. So again, humans are biased where we have our own drives, and unfortunately a lot of that's money driven, and that becomes a problem because people can't step back and look at the good.
And that's where this whole wild dog thing comes into play, because when the government uses the term wild dog, it's easy for the public to digest the killing of a wild dog as opposed to the killing of a dingo. When people say, oh, you're killing dingoes, people's ears prick up and go, whoa, you're killing a dingo? What do you mean you're killing a dingo? And it's like, it's just a wild dog. I'm just killing a wild dog. No one thinks twice. No one blinks twice. And it's just like, good job, mate. It's another $150 for the bounty. Good job, mate.
Yeah, and look, that's the bounty side, isn't it? When there's a bounty on something, that even if the evidence is there to overturn it, that it's going to hurt people's pockets.
Yeah, and you look at it.
That becomes a problem.
The government's got the dingo on the endangered list, but now it's got a bounty on a dingo, bounty on a wild dog, but it's on the endangered list. It's like, how can this be? How do you get your head around that? You've got a bounty on an endangered animal, but you want to call it a wild dog so it helps you sleep at night? Like, surely at some point you've got to go, right, enough of the bullshit. Enough with the bullshit. It's a dingo. It's a dingo. It's a domestic dog. Have a bounty on a fox. Put $150 on a fox. Watch everyone go crazy shooting foxes. I bet you, that's where it should be at. They're the problem.
Why isn't there, like, on that? Like, what's your thoughts on it? Because I don't understand the difference in that we target the wild dogs and foxes differently, in my opinion.
So, it's just, it gets back to being able to deal with the public. The government needs to be able to deal with the public and say, we've got a problem with wild dogs, we need to be able to deal with it. And the term wild dog allows them to be able to do that. Okay, so when they go down the path of calling it a dingo, then more regulations come into play. It's got more meaning to people. It goes down the native animal path, so people get a little bit more invested into dingoes than they do. It's just a wild dog. It's a hybrid, and this has all been created just so that the public can digest the killing of them. And then you put a bounty on it. And people go, oh yeah, free money. Yeah, I'll get me bounties. I'll pay for me juice going up the scrub, go hound hunting, and I'll get as many dogs as I can, and that'll pay for all my ammo and all me fuel, and good as gold.
Yeah, it's one for me. I sort of sit there and I get people offsetting the cost, and I think that in this current climate as well, everyone's doing it a lot tougher financially. Yeah. So that then puts a bigger target on anything that has a bounty on it too. And
$150 a bounty,
goes sort of hand in hand.
That's a lot of money for something like, if you're using a small ammo, for $2 for a 223 or 30-06 or something like that, and $150, you get 3 of them over the weekend, you've made heaps of money.
Yeah, and that's maybe sending the wrong message. I'm not opposed to bounties. I think bounties are a good way for people to tackle different things under under conservation. But when you bring in an economic value, sometimes it goes past that because people are thinking about the hip pocket as opposed to conservation. Yeah. So it's about finding that balance. I think that's in everything that we do, is trying to find the balance between what is right for nature, what is right for us as people in nature, because I think we remove ourselves too much from that.
I definitely think that there is warrant in killing dingoes on private property. When you've got animals that are doing damage, then you need to sort that out. There are alternative ways to go about it. If people do want to go about it in a different way, that's where it should be at. Like, if you've got a dingo that's causing problems, you know what? Do the best, shoot it, whatever. Take the e-tip off it. Send it away for DNA if you want to do that, and get the absolute proof for yourself. Do your own research, and you are in control of what you have on your property, whether you deem it as a wild dog or you deem it as a dingo. You're doing your own research and making your own mind up to be able to go, righto, I'm going to protect that animal, or I'm going to get rid of that animal. And so that's where it needs to be at. The bounty is too widespread. It takes too much out of the ecosystem. If the bounty was to be, dropped on wild dogs or the dingo, and increased on foxes and feral cats and deer that are all pest animals, wouldn't that be a better way for hunters to be able to get more motivated and to be able to go and do that sort of recreational hunting? Pigs as well, why not put bounties on them? The only reason why they won't put bounties on them is because they're in prolific numbers that it would cost an absolute arm and a leg for the government to fork out for.
And that was what I was sort of alluding to when I was talking about the fox-dingo comparison on bounties, because when we're saying, hey, these populations are in plague proportion or large numbers and it's impacting the environment or, culturally significant sites, et cetera, there's a simple way to add a bounty there. And I think the GMA put it out in the last couple of days where they're promoting the taking of more hinds to control populations. And I think that's a smart idea. I'm not opposed to that at all. And I get people want antlers. Look, for me, I'm not that great a hunter, so it's probably why I just take whatever I can get. But for me, a hind to control numbers or a doe is a smart play. And I'm not sure why, I think the states do it where they have you might have to have 2 doe tags and a buck or something along those lines so that you are controlling the population. Because I think there's 2 mindsets. People go, yep, it's great. We've got so many deer because we can hunt them. But then that's the offset too, because if that's too high, then we start to face them getting wiped out by 1080.
That's it. And
aerial culling,
and that's the best thing about hound hunters. Hound hunters are non-selective. They take whatever the dogs they're on scent for. And that's an absolute credit to all the hound hunters out there. And even though I'm not a hound hunter, I don't really enjoy hound hunting. I'm not partial to it, but in the controlling of deer, it's probably the most effective method of controlling deer. And then if you were to open up more country for hound hunters and give them larger areas, then they're going to go bam, and they'll wipe out a lot more deer than anyone else can even contemplate. You look at the technology that they've got today, and shooting 100 deer a year was unheard of. When I was back in 18, 19, I started hound hunting, and if you shot 1 deer a weekend, you had a good one. It was time to get on the piss and hang around the campfire and have a good time. But now, like these guys, they're shooting 100 deer a year, if not more, and you just go, wow, that's huge. If multiple crews are doing that, then how many numbers are out there?
Yeah, and I think it's a silly argument saying that there's not an overpopulation of deer. And again, it comes back to I love deer. I don't want to see them wiped off the landscape. I think that they've been here, they've adapted very, very well. They're a great resource to have. But we need to control the numbers and we need to be smart about how we do that. And I feel sometimes if we are just going to target the stags and the bucks, and nothing against that. Everyone can do their own thing, but I also you've got to understand that action is met with reaction, and if those numbers keep growing because you pass up on that hind or that doe, that's a problem going forward into the future because that's where we need more aerial culling. Like I hate that. I hate the fact that it's just laying waste to meat that people could have, and I've talked about. Over in New Zealand, the Hunters for Hope or something like that. I can't remember what they were called, but 400,000 meals were provided in Canterbury. Like we aren't doing those things here. That's nuts to me. So, look, that's a good transition. Let's talk about Sambar because I know that's your other passion.
Absolutely, I love killing Sambar.
And you've done a lot of it. So I think you've been going at it for a good 20 plus years now.
Yeah, we've smoked a few.
Yeah, and you've got some good heads there, and you seem to know your stuff. Now, I'm going away chasing them for the first time where I'm actually targeting them. Usually I just go deer hunting, whatever. It
shoot
doesn't
the first
bother
one
me.
you see because it's the closest to the car.
Mate, well, brown's down, and I haven't even done that many of them, to be honest. I need to get better at that. But for me, I'm wanting some tips because – I've got to, in camp, there's a bit of a battle going on in our camp at the moment. So I'm going in very undergunned with my knowledge compared to a couple of mates. So what are some beginner basics or something you could throw at me that you've learnt over the years?
My heart cringes every time I open Instagram and I see someone standing in the middle of a wallow or their gun leaning up against a rub tree and a preach tree. And they're taking photos and things like that. And I'm thinking, what the hell are you doing? Just putting all your scent all over all that area. And, if you know that there's a wallow there or you get to see mud on bracken or pick up mud on leaves that there's a wallow nearby, you need to just stop, slow down and literally just sit for long periods of time and not move because you don't know whether those deer are 15 metres ahead of you or 100 metres on the other side of a wallow or a creek system. And if you start pushing into those areas because you want to see what the wallow is, then potentially you're just going to push your deer out and get honked at. And next thing you know, all you're seeing is a ginger bum running away from you. Then that would be my biggest thing is just long stops and just very slow. You walk 3 paces and you count 10 seconds. You walk 3 paces and you count 10 seconds. And if you know you're in the zone or you're in that particular moment, then you'll feel it. You'll know that there's animals there and you need to just stop and just watch and wait and don't move. For me, I'll get in the bush at, say, between 12 and 2 o'clock in the afternoon because I know I can make a little bit more noise. I can get to the areas that I need to be in because I know the deer are going to be at this area in a particular time. So I need to be able to be ahead of them and let them come to me. And once I know that the deer are there, I'm not looking for footprints. I'm not looking for deer shit. I know the deer are there. If you know the deer are there, get your eyes up and start looking around. Don't get focused on looking at deer poo or freaking footprints or rub trees. You need to be looking for an antler. You need to be looking for ears. You need to be looking for a tail. You need to be looking for movement. And that, once you start focusing on looking for the deer and not the sign, you will achieve a lot more.
You gave me two things there. I always wonder, everyone says when you think you're going slow enough, slow down. So I love that you went in a bit more detail and said 3 steps, count to 10, because that, I think, it's a real easy sort of platform to follow.
Yeah.
Where we're headed is sort of, it's hilly, but it's not like you guys have down in the high country. Now, I know the animals are there. I've got them on trail camera. For me, are we sort of going, are you going up and over out those hills? Are you sort of contouring around?
More so halfway up, halfway along is a very good terminology. Stags, deer, they love to be observant. They love to be able to see areas, and as you would, like you're a prey animal, and that's all you are. You're a creature of habit. You are a creature of prey. So you need to observe every possible thing that's going to come to you, at you, and so they need to be in an area where wind is in their favour. They've got observation in their favour, and if their eyes can't see, their ears are doing all the work. And if you can control your scent, you can control your noise and the direction in which you're pushing into, then you will have success. It's just a creature of habit. You know that they're going to be in the creek wallow, and you know that they're going to be somewhere feeding, in the gully systems. You just need to put yourself somewhat halfway, and it's only a matter of time before you cross paths.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. The one thing I haven't really got good at finding wallows. I found a couple here and there, but nothing major. And my sort of question was, all right, without throwing a trail camera up, is there a bit of a pattern of when they're going to visit that wallow? Is it going to be more morning? Is it going to be more afternoon?
Well, if you do a lot of studying through other people's trail cameras, you'll tend to find a lot of daytime pics. So for me, a lot of times around 12 o'clock to 2 o'clock, stags and deer are at wallows. I don't know why, but they tend to get up and visit through that mid-afternoon. And if you take the time and study a lot of other people's Instas and their trail pics and things like that, you will see that those deer are at a particular time mid-afternoon. And when you look at it in this point of view, in the morning, you're chasing a deer that's got a full belly looking for a bed. Okay, so it wants to bed, it wants to go down. In the afternoon, you're looking for a deer that's hungry, a deer that's been bedded all day, that's sore and needs to get up and stretch and needs to walk around, it needs to graze, it needs to, see who's around. So it's more active in the afternoons. And for me, for the last probably 7-8 years, all my hunting is afternoons. Mornings are for sleeping in, afternoons of hunting.
Yeah, right. I've heard that a few times now, that people spend a bit more time focusing afternoons for sambar.
The only downside of afternoons is you lose your light to recover an animal.
I was going to say that, in such a big animal
is very tricky. Yeah.
I don't know how you guys do it down in Vic. Like, I sort of sit there and look at some of that high country up and down. That's crazy stuff. And they are such a large animal for carryouts.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've spoken to mates that are saying, 4 trips to get one out, and you're just thinking how many hours that would take.
Yeah. It gets very,
Props to
very
you
hard.
guys.
Yeah. And
Great fitness.
yeah, you do get fit. Yeah, absolutely. You think you're half what fit until you have to drag out a sambar deer. But some of the gullies systems where we go up into, and you can't get quad bikes up in there. You can't get 4-wheel drives anywhere near it. You've got no choice. If you shoot that animal, you're going to carry it out. And I'm very big on no waste. I cringe if I leave the slightest bit of waste in the bush. And when you get a big shot and you just tear out everything, and we're using big calibers, and you do a lot of damage, and you go, right, oh well, I can let that front forequarter go, and it's like you'd be sitting back at home, it's like I could have got that leg, and it's like I've got sweat pouring out my eyeballs, my back's hurting, my friggin' hands are sore, my feet are drowned, and you just go, I got everything out. I did my best. I could have got that little bit more.
Well, the other thing is, mate, your dogs must love you, because I constantly see them getting into the venison.
They are full as a boot.
Oh, what a lucky buggers,
Yeah.
it's gold. And I love seeing that. Just nothing going to waste, as much as possible using. So
Yep.
you've obviously got the dingoes there, but I noticed you got German wire-haired pointers as well.
Yeah, yep. So we got 2 German wire pointers. They're up about 8 years old now, so they're a bit more senior on the 2 dingoes who are coming up to 4. They're 3.5, nearly 4 now. So they've done well with the dingoes, and they get along really well. The dingoes were introduced to the family as cubs, so that worked really well. But the wire pointers, I love them to death. We got them to hunt with. Then I started using muzzle brakes, and I refuse to have a deaf dog.
Yeah.
And so they don't get to go out with me much anymore. And I love them to death, so I don't want to go through life with a deaf dog. So I choose to leave them at home.
We were talking about this the other week, Frank and I, and the New South Wales feral pest animal strategy was coming up, the plan, and suppressors don't seem to ever get mentioned. And on the back, and he was talking about it, something I never even thought about, to be honest, because I don't hunt with dogs. Never sort of been out once and followed hurls from the hunter's campfire with his dog Missy, and that was awesome to watch her work. But that was the first physical experience I'd had. And you don't think about that. You don't think about that poor animal whose hearing is far better than ours. And we know what shooting a rifle does if you're not using hearing protection for us. That whole suppressor argument's annoying too, and especially on the back of for dogs. It's something that sucks hearing you go, well, I don't want to take the dogs out because, I'm shooting a muzzle brake. So, and I get that, especially Sambar from people saying if you don't get them right, they go. And that video you had up, that one you got, and it had that bullet hole in it in the wrong spot. It obviously lived for a while with it. They're tough bloody animals.
Yeah, I've got 2 stags down there in the shed. I've got to boil one head out, and there's 2 stags that were shot within probably 600 meters of each other as the crow flies, and both those stags have got 22 bullets in the forehead. So there's someone out there that is just shooting away. They're not even trying to take meat. They're not even looking for heads. They're just trying to cull and do it in an inhumane way and an unethical way that makes me sick. And when I see that, I just think to myself, why would I ever leave any deer alive in the paddock to suffer that death? So, for me to take a stag is absolute respect for that stag. I make sure that I'm, doing everything right with the big calibers and doing all that. And it makes me feel sick to the stomach when I bring home an animal and it's just riddled with bullet holes, and it's still surviving. Like, there's broken legs, there's friggin' bullet holes in the backs of necks and bullet holes in their forehead because they don't know where the brain cavity is in the skull of a stag or a deer in full stop. So they're trying to shoot between the eyes and hoping for the best. And next thing you know, this poor bloody deer's got friggin' 22 bullet in its bloody head.
Well, worse than that, that's illegal. And
absolutely. If I catch the bloke, it'd be a good conversation.
Yeah. Well, the problem is this is where we really need to draw a line in the sand to say, hey, hunters are on the conservation, ethical, right side of things.
Yeah.
Those that aren't, they're not hunters. They got nothing to do with us.
Absolutely.
That's ridiculous. So 22 for a sambar, and a stag. What are you guessing that animal weighs that had a 22 in it?
It probably, the big fellow, it would have been up in necessarily about 300 kilos, if not maybe a bit more. Full body weight, guts and skin and, all everything. You'd be looking at 300 to 350 kilo animal. And you've got no chance of trying to pull up any deer or drop it on the spot or do any, other than just create a painful, death if it does die. Otherwise, it's got to go through life with, pain for the rest of its life.
And then you're not even knowing how far away they were when they were shooting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Personally, I would never even think to try and hit a sambar with a 22. I just don't even.
Yeah.
I don't understand why you'd even try. But and we don't have the caliber restrictions up here. We've only got the recommendations. So for us, we potentially could legally. I'm not saying do it because I think it's just dead set wrong. But you got to wonder sometimes. I think the majority of people out there do the right thing.
I think as a hunting group, it's time for hunters to start calling out bad behaviour. For the hunting community to survive the next 10 years, the hunting community needs to start calling out bad behaviour and start dealing with this inappropriate people with guns and doing illegal shit. So, you drive down the road and how many road signs do you see with bullet holes in them? And you look down through the bullet hole through the sign and you go, that bullet was travelling 100 metres down the road into a bend. If someone had come around that corner at the wrong time and, got through, you see it over, every bush track you go up now is a delineator post or a road sign with a 0 in it or, some sort of target 0 in it. People are shooting at it and you go, why? If you haven't got that trust in your gun from the last time you shot it, you probably shouldn't be shooting at all.
It's interesting you said that because there was a Facebook post the other day where someone had got lost from a state forest and ended up in private property. And the person put it up and said, look, just want to have a chat to you, you got lost, et cetera, et cetera. And there's a lot of people jumped on and said, oh, it's really positive, well done, et cetera, et cetera. I don't really necessarily agree with that. Because it's part of your written permission in the state forest up here in New South Wales that you have a GPS-enabled device and you are hunting within the legal area. Now, a couple of things have happened here. For you to find yourself onto private property means you're either not checking your maps, your GPS maybe you've got flat, whatever, but you've done the wrong thing. So
you're walking away from your car.
Well,
to start with,
that potentially, and you're sitting there going, well, by us saying, oh, you don't know the circumstances, etc., you're condoning that behaviour. So then that almost gives this excuse to people to go, I made a mistake. I just happened to be in the wrong spot.
It's just pleading ignorance.
Well, but I think it goes further to that. You're condoning it. And if you're condoning something like that, you're supporting it. Like that is a major problem. Yes, it could have been a mistake, but you know what? Unlucky. You made the mistake.
And that's the thing. Like when I hunt new ground, wherever I park my car, I work semicircles around my car. And then the next time you go out, you'd go a bit bigger and then you go a bit bigger and you'll get your bearings very well. If you're not using GPSs and personal locating beacons and things like that, if you use that area to your advantage and you hunt little area, then you broaden it again and you hunt that one spot religiously over a period of 12 months, 2 years, 3 years, you'll learn that spot to the point where you'll know it better than what the deer know it. And that to me is how I learned to hunt areas in my backyard, the Black Range and those areas. And, I can go out to any one of those spots now. I can be at a tree, in a gully system at a certain time, and I know that those deer are going to walk up there. And that's because I've spent the time in hunting that area, and just hunting the one spot over and over and over again. Because if you hunt 10 different spots, 10 different deer, you won't shoot one of them.
Look, I put my hand up for that. I do that a lot, is that I find new spots or go to new forests, and I do like the exploring side of it too. So could be why I'm not very successful at all, but it's a bit of everything for me. I want to find that place that I just go, this is the spot, and then go back to it. I wanted trial and error quite a few for that. So I have said it previously that I don't think I've ever got more than 5 times in one state forest up here. And that's a big problem, because you're only covering a small amount of the forest when you're there. And then I've tried to stay to the same spot. Sometimes it doesn't work out because people are there as well, because it is public land at the end of the day. So it's an area that I'm always probably going through almost new territory, and that doesn't help. And also I get real time lapses between when I get out, unfortunately. So that's another problem, because the deer move in different times as well. So I might have been there, sort of got some trail camera footage, but by the time I get back there, it's different again.
And I think for me personally, I'm pretty lucky that I live so close to the bush, and we've got so many deer spots, very close to home, that we can hunt mid-afternoons, all week around. And so we're getting to learn those spots a lot more frequently. And for the people that have got to drive a long period of time and only get to hunt, maybe one Saturday a fortnight, or one Saturday every Saturday, so be it, you will get to those areas, but you will have forgotten what you've learnt the first time, because you get so pumped and so excited, and then you got all this energy to try and get out and go looking for a deer, that all the 1%ers start to fall back out of your brain, and before you know it, you're getting honked at, and you just go, damn, I should have gone the other way, or I should have bloody sat down and just a little bit longer, or, should have been here 5 minutes earlier.
Mate, it sounds like you've been following me and watching what I do, because that was
I've laid in bed a lot of nights, mate, working out these bloody deer.
Mate, I do usually it's about 3 months as a school teacher. I tend to get away in school holidays only. So it's every 3 months, and that is what I do. And then I get so pumped. And that, I think, is also one of those, I'm terrible at sitting still. I can't sit there for 45 minutes is sort of the max, because then I'm sitting there going, I only have 3 days. I haven't seen anything in 45 minutes. I've got to get moving. And I know it's probably the wrong thing to do, but because I've got such a small amount of time, well, it's the way I sell it to myself as well, is that I want to get on the move and see if I can find sign, and then find somewhere where there might be more deer, or I might have a better chance. That's a big problem. I know that. And look, I'm not professing to be a great hunter. I don't think I ever will be. It's until, I get to spend a lot more time in the bush. So getting out there and having a crack and talking to people like yourself and hearing these things, I know it. I listen and I go, yep, all right, I got to do that. So I'm hoping the next trip I'll be able to sit there and go, you know what, all right, here we go. I
just keep telling myself that opportunity will present. And every time you think that you want to move forward or change spots, you just go, no, opportunity will present. And you just keep repeating that into your head. And before you know it, you'll see ear flashes, or you'll see tail flick up, or, you'll see this big head just standing there looking at you going, whoa, what the hell? And, but if you can control your scent, and, numerous times I've been so obsessed with what I'm doing that I'll get the bladder out of a stag and put that in a perfume bottle and spray that on my boots and spray that on my clothes, and trying to mask my scent to the best of my ability. And I just get so fixated on trying to get that one animal, and I won't stop until I've gotten it. And then all this stuff just comes into play, and you think outside the box, and then you get it. Right, I don't want to put pee on myself because it stinks, and you can only do it for so long before you start to get a headache. And then you go, well, right, how about I get a rag, soak the rag in it, put that up in a tree so that the wind carries that scent all the way through the gully system, and I'll go back another 100 meters around the other side, and then hopefully that deer will start to come in and go, oh, there's someone else in my environment. I'm going to go up in here and see who it is, and I'm going to punch on with him. And next thing you know, he walks out and does something stupid, and you get a shot off. There's many different ways to so much involved in it. And, for me, another good time is when the wattle trees are in full yellow blossom, it's a very potent smell in the blossom. So handfuls of that yellow blossom, rub that into your clothes and get it all over you, into your hats and anywhere where your scent can get caught by the wind and get taken away. You need to pump that, that blossom into you. And if that doesn't work, then you can get tea tree. And if you crumble tea tree up in your hand and you can smell it, and you can rub that into your clothes a bit and get a bit more earthier smell through it. So, yeah, I get so fixated on it, and then I just see people walking straight into a wallow and taking photos in a wallow, or they got their guns leaning up against a peach tree or a bloody rub tree because it's, it makes a good photo, and they're just leaving all that scent everywhere. And no wonder that, stags don't sort of come back, or they've already smelt them, or, they're not going to get that opportunity to get that animal.
Do you run the flex mark?
The flex mark caller?
The caller, yeah.
No, I don't like it.
Okay.
For me personally, it's my choice. I don't like it because you're imitating a fawn, and you're drawing a doe or any animal out of the bush, but mainly the does will come to it, and therefore you're going to shoot a deer, a doe, and then you're going to potentially leave a fawn in the bush that's end up going to die. A lot of people will say, oh, who cares? It's just a fawn. It's a pest animal anyway. But for me, it's unethical to do that. And that's just my choice. That's not for anyone. I'm not casting my opinion on anyone. If you use it and you have good success with it, that's great. Good on you. That's good. But for me personally, I won't use it. I don't like it. However, the only good time that I've had with a flex mark caller is when I'm pushing kangaroos in front of me. And if I'm trying to get to my areas and there's a mob of kangaroos, then I can just bleep on that and they calm down. It sort of just brings the situation back under control a bit. I've had really good success just being able to move through non-targeted species of animals to get to where I need to go to.
Yeah, right. Okay, that's interesting to hear. Never thought about that.
That's a lot of fringe country hunting and a lot of private property hunting where you have large numbers of kangaroos to try and get through before you get to your kill zones or your hunting area.
Yeah. Never thought about that when you're talking about you're imitating a fawn. So if a hind's coming out to you, that you're sitting there going, I'm potentially taking it away from a bedded down fawn, etc. Okay, yeah.
And does will leave their fawns in the bush, for hundreds of meters, and then they'll go back to them and they'll call them. And one thing we're starting to do a bit of more thermal work out on the properties. When you're sitting there in the pitch black, you start to hear different noises that deer make because they're trying to contact fawns and they're trying to pair back up with their fawns. And you go, whoa, I didn't even know deer were capable of making these little noises.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, they've got their own little communication going on. It's very, very interesting when you sit in the bush in complete darkness and you go, whoa, what's around me?
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear. So before we go, mate, what's the biggest one you've shot? Because you've got some crackers, so I figured I'd ask.
So I've only managed to get a 30 who's up in my lounge room wall. So yeah, we took a shot at him at 680 meters the first time we saw him with 300 Win Mag, and we put the projectile about 4 inches over the top of his scon. We were aiming dead on his chest, and then we gave him a couple of days, and we found him again. And so we thought, it's pretty windy. We're not going to risk taking a long shot. It's just a bit silly. So we walked in on him and we sort of lost him, and he came back through behind this tea tree, and I ended up pulling up at about 25 meters away from him and smacked him in the chest. But yeah, he ended up winning 30, just on 30 by 29 with a 31 spread. A bit spindly, which is this kind of country. We don't really get real big beams, but yeah, very nice head indeed. He's my pride and joy. But yeah, he's the longest. The best head I've ever shot would be a 28-inch who's beside him.
Well, hopefully I'll have one of them in my future at some stage. And look, I hope that I've been hunting for 25 years or so like yourself. And I wish you all the best for another 25 going forward. And can't wait to see your exploits over on Instagram as we go. So if you haven't, guys, go and check out the obsessed Sambar man. And mate, love what you're doing. Keep doing it. You're a very passionate bloke, and I love to see that. So yeah, just keep doing it and living what you're doing.
That's it. Just keep knocking them over.
Happy days.
All right, mate.
All right, Rob,
take care.
Thanks for joining us. And all right, guys, bye for now. If you have a topic, guest, question, or any gear that you want to hear about on the podcast, shoot us an email, australianhuntingandbeyond@gmail.com. Alternatively, find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All the links are in the show notes. If you haven't already, make sure you give us a review and subscribe to our podcast on whatever platform you're listening on. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.